in this age, we have a lot of movement towards sort of globalization. The world has become very much a village, as they say, and we're much more connected than we ever were. Trade, culture, communication, things have become very much homogenized. If I went to Nigeria for holiday, I'm gutted because there's no McDonald's. I'm part joking, but I think we get the point. You will find McDonald's in most countries now. And there's a big shift towards more information, more services, and more technology. And these things have been amazing. You know, our lives are much easier for it. But as with all the other ages and generations that I've spoken about, we are dealing with some unique challenges that our ancestors didn't deal with. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Travel Light. It's your friend, Dr. Unoma, as always. I hope you guys are doing well. If this is your first time joining us, this is Travel Light. I am Unoma, and I'm a psychiatrist based in sunny Glasgow, Scotland. And more importantly, guys, I am a lover of Jesus, and I just love how much he loves us. At Travel Light, we are on a quest to live that abundant life that he promised us. He wants us to live freely and lightly. So here we are exploring mental and emotional health through the eyes of the Good Shepherd himself, and just figuring out what it looks like to give God access to this space. All right, so welcome back. And if you haven't done that yet, I would like you to just take a second to subscribe to this channel. It means that every time I have new content coming out, you're going to be the first to know, essentially. And we can continue the journey together and nobody is left behind. And if you know anyone who would benefit from the content that I put out, the discussions that we have as a community, please go ahead and like and share away. Sharing is caring, as they say. So welcome back again. I hope you guys are well. As you know, we have been on this series looking at stress. And this is now our 5th episode, I believe, in the series. And I hope you guys have found it helpful and interesting, at least. In the last episode, we were exploring the link between stress and mental illness. And I have to say, I'm really encouraged to hear the feedback from that episode. It sounds like it really struck a chord with people, which is great. And if you haven't watched that episode yet, you can go back and look on the YouTube channel and catch the episode there. I really thank you so much for telling me that you found that helpful. So this episode today, we are going to be looking at stress from a different perspective. I often talk about how I started Travel Light because I found that life is moving really fast and we have everything that should make us feel comfortable. Yet, for some reason, as a society, I just sense that we are much more stressed than we've ever been. I certainly can speak for myself that I have struggled in the last few years just to maintain balance. And I'm not going to sound like my parents or my uncles or my aunties when I sound like this, but back in our day, you know that chat, our parents were always first in class and they got all the A's and yeah, nobody else did that. But there's a sense, we always look back with nostalgia at where we've come from as opposed to where we are now. The truth is that there has been a lot of progress made in our time. And I guess the bigger truth is that every generation will have had its privileges and its unique challenges. And I was thinking about the different ages that we've passed through as a human race. So going back to the Middle Ages, so also known as the Dark Ages, between 500 and 1500. So in those days, when you watch television, there's the noble class and there's the people who are working in farms and are really poor, and there's some merchant class, and society was really stratified and very ordered in those days. And there was a lot of cultural and intellectual flourishing. Because of the social order, there was a sense of stability. But again, it was feudal. So there were a lot of people who were being oppressed within the system. And what I did like about that time, I'm going to sound, again, like our parents, but at that time, there was the ideals of chivalry were very much valued. So courage and honor and loyalty among knights, for example, was deeply celebrated and honored. And I really like that. And back then, there was a strong influence of the church and religion, in society, which on its face sounds good, but actually it wasn't all the time. But thinking about the challenges that they had at that time, there was massive social inequalities. It was difficult to have opportunity or access to opportunity if you were from lower classes. I remember when I went to Paris for a trip, and I really love, the walking tours. They're amazing. When you go with a local and they take you to all the really fun spots and they give you history back then and now. And we went to Notre Dame, and we were told that, when Notre Dame was built, which was in the Middle Ages, education was really scarce commodity. Not everybody had access to that, except you were, of course, the higher class. And they showed us in the architecture that because people didn't have access to Bibles, they would draw Bible stories, or carve out Bible stories, I should say, within the structure of the architecture, so people would learn about the crucifixion, the death, burial, and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, and rapture to come, and the disciples, and all those things. So things we take for granted. I mean, I've read the Bible since I was able to. So again, education was very limited in that time. And God forbid you were alive when there was an outbreak of disease. It didn't matter if you were from the upper echelons of society or if you were one of the downtroddens, you would probably catch the Black Plague. You know what I mean? So that time had its challenges, and also the beauty of it existed. Then following that age was the Renaissance period. Extraordinary advancements in art, in science, in literature. We have from that period coming Leonardo da Vinci, whose works we still celebrate to this day. Michelangelo as well came from that time. And there were major scientific advancements in that time as well. We had the printing press, they had the microscope, telescope. Have you guys ever used those, by the way? Yeah, well, I've used them. And really amazing that it came from that time. So between the 1500s and the 1800s. But again, if you were born in that time, there was that sense of social inequality. There was a lot of religious conflicts. And, there was a lot of colonialism at that time as well, which there were some benefits from that period. But many countries, again, are still suffering from the fallout of those exploitations. And then following that came the industrial age between 1800 and 1945. Guys, I'm giving you a history lesson today. Anyway, in that time, there was a movement from agricultural economies to industrial production. So people were moving away from rural areas, going to the big urban cities for work. And there was a real boom in technological advancement. So steam engines, cars, railroads, airplanes came from that period. But unfortunately, with that expansion of technology and that sort of movement in terms of how economies worked, there were poor working conditions for people. People were exploited because of their labor. Environments didn't do very well because we were harnessing a lot of the environments to move technology forward. And of course, we had the two major wars in that time, World War I and World War II. So I wouldn't have liked to be born that time, to be honest with you. Born in wars just didn't sound very good. And then following on from that, we come to the age that we find ourselves, which is the information age or the digital age. So from circa 1945 till now. And in this time, we've seen the rise of computers. The internet is booming. Digital technologies are massive. Now we have AI becoming a commodity that we can all enjoy. Whereas, when we watched, I remember when we were kids, we watched shows like RoboCop. Is that what it's called? And the idea of robots was like, it wasn't really fathomable. I mean, we could imagine it, but my goodness, it's really right here within our grasp. And in this age, we have a lot of movement towards sort of globalization. The world has become very much a village, as they say, and we're much more connected than we ever were. Trade, culture, communication, things have become very much homogenized. So if I went to Nigeria for holiday, I'm gutted because there's no McDonald's. I'm part joking, but I think we get the point. You will find McDonald's in most countries now, if you know what I mean, if you're going on holiday. And there's a big shift towards more information, more services, and more technology. And these things have been amazing. Our lives are much easier for it. But as with all the other ages and generations that I've spoken about, we are dealing with some unique challenges that our ancestors didn't deal with. And it's worth looking at because when we are able to have a better awareness of the, again, unique privileges that we enjoy, but also the challenges that come with it. It helps with our self-awareness, our awareness of the environment, and our ability to manage these challenges and manage the stress that comes from them. So thinking about the sources of stress that we are now faced with that, say, our ancestors didn't have. Information overload is a massive one. I can't go a day without getting notifications on my phone from Apple, notifications from whatever subscriptions I've signed up to about breaking news, wars here and there, whatever elections are coming up, things like that. Social media as well bombards us with tons of information, and it can be very overwhelming and difficult to manage. I have to say, work-life balance is another one. So especially post-pandemic, we all, I guess, experience it now where we are able to work remotely more than we did before, and there has been a blurring, I would say, of the boundaries between work and personal life. And certainly when I work from home, I find it particularly difficult to switch off and say, okay, I'm finishing at 5 and that's it, because I'm in my home, there's no drive. It's become much more difficult to maintain that balance. And also because there is an expectation that you're always available, because for goodness sake, you have your laptop. People are sending you emails for, after hours, expecting that you will respond to them. And that can lead to real burnout. Social media is a great thing, is a great tool, but there's this need to maintain an online presence that I have to say a lot of the time can be inauthentic. We want to present ourselves in the best possible light to get the most likes that we can get and receive affirmation from people, our friends, our family, and even strangers that we've never met before. And also there's this, unfortunately, this temptation to compare ourselves to other people. And that can create a lot of social pressure and anxiety. Another one is privacy concerns, cybersecurity. And I know there is a real move to manage this by the government so that, our information is not being shared without our permission, or God forbid we clicked on the terms and conditions and we didn't read all the hundreds and thousands of words in them and didn't realize we were signing our lives away. This year, actually, I mentioned this on the podcast. I went to South Africa for holiday, did my thing, had a swell time, came back, and 2 weeks into my returning, I get a message from my credit card company asking me if I was aware of this transaction that was being done whilst I was here in Glasgow. Somebody in South Africa was about to use my credit card to pay for something online. So I'm like, no, that's not me. Thank you very much. And thank God, there are all these systems to capture this. But my holiday was a holiday, and I didn't realize in that time someone had managed to clone my details. So it's crazy what happens. And another thing that has come with this age is, this real risk of becoming addicted to the digital space. I think we can all relate to that. I certainly put my hand up here. It's something I've had to deal with. I certainly have found that I use digital devices excessively. Social media has become such a part of my day-to-day that I'm constantly scrolling, and this can lead to real addictive behaviors, and it can impact on your mental health and your productivity. And have you ever thought about how much your time online affects your time with the Holy Spirit? How much time do we devote to social media as opposed to spending time with the Lord and actually developing our inner man and strengthening our relationship with the Father? And, thinking about these additional sources of stress is one thing, but actually in the digital age, because of the ubiquitous nature of technology, the already present sources of stress have become more amplified. So economic pressures, for example, so that's always been an issue. There is jobs insecurity has been a thing for a long time, because if you're employed, there's always that risk of you being laid off and things like that. But with digital transformation of industries, there is now real risk of people losing their job, as a need to keep on upgrading your skills, and that can lead to real pressure and add to the potential of financial stress. Mental health issues have been an issue for time immemorial, but now we have the issues that come with social media, so we're compounding on already present problems. And oddly and weirdly enough, and ironically enough, whatever the word is, even though we have become a much more connected world in terms of how quickly we can get in contact with people from the other side of the globe. My parents are not with me, but I can see their faces within 30 seconds on WhatsApp, for example. For some reason, people are feeling even deeper feelings of loneliness and isolation because more meaningful in-person interactions have been lost. So these are the real issues that we're facing in our day and age. So as I mentioned earlier, it is super important that we understand these challenges so that we can develop strategies to cope with them effectively. We can improve our mental health. We can become much more productive. We can become better at managing the way we relate to technology. And we can then, drive policy and support education as well. So super important that we're aware and we can develop a more balanced and healthy life in this digital world, because it is not going anywhere. We are where we are. As I was preparing for this podcast, I came across a term called techno stress, something I'd never come across before. Techno stress was first used by a researcher in 1984, a man called Craig Broad, and he defined it as a modern disease of adaptation caused by an inability to cope with the new computer technologies in a healthy manner. I bet he's looking at us now in 2024 going, we did not know what was coming. And that was back then. But now we are bombarded with new technology like almost every day. And we are seeing that actually techno stress is a thing. And it's now a word now used to describe stress and negative psychological effects that arise from the use of technology. And this can come from things ranging from digital devices to software, internet, and it can affect individuals and organizations. So this constant connectivity, email overload, social media pressures can contribute to techno stress. Okay. In terms of constant connectivity, I think we can all relate to that pressure to keep up with our emails, our messages, and notifications. My sister-in-law was looking at my phone the other day, and I don't feel the pressure to clear my notifications as compared with the average person. I don't really care that much. She looked at my phone and she said she was getting anxiety looking at my notifications because I wasn't clearing them. She could see the number of WhatsApp messages I hadn't looked at and things like that. But I think we can all relate to that, right? I know myself when I'm on holiday. Certainly the last holiday I was looking at my emails. I mean, in the paradise of South Africa, for goodness sake, I had to eventually just go, look, I am turning my notifications off and I'm not looking at them anymore. And we talked about information overload, and that can really contribute to stress because we are bombarded with so much information and it can lead to what we call cognitive overload. We can find difficult to concentrate, find difficult to make decisions because there is that fatigue of all that information that's bombarded at us. And we find this need to constantly process and filter information, make decisions very quickly. And when we don't, we feel that we're not achieving enough. It's a lot going on. And I've mentioned social media comparison. Being bombarded with everybody else's best lives, which, to be honest, is not necessarily accurate, just puts us under that pressure. And I know I have felt feelings of inadequacy, and I begin to wonder if I was doing everything that I could to live my own best life. But looking at myself, I know that the times I've posted frequently and regularly, they have not always been real representations of where I was at in my life. So we're all, with respect, all living fake lives or presenting our best lives on social media, and they're not necessarily accurate. And this is something I haven't dealt with myself, but people have dealt with cyberbullying and harassment, and that can really impact on people's mental health as well. And I talked about isolation. It really is a big thing. We can get so used to our computers, so used to our phones. They do exactly what we want. They don't talk back to us, and they are loyal, and they show us what we need. And the echo chambers that we have built in social media spaces, we just keep us in comfort. But the truth is, nothing can beat face-to-face interaction, real, genuine, vulnerable conversations we can have with family and friends. So even though we are trying to protect ourselves against the negativity that we can face from facing human beings, the truth of the matter is that we can become quite isolated. We were made for connection and community. So digital interactions may often lack depth and and the emotional connections of in-person relationships. There is nothing like going on a walk with your friend and enjoying the breeze on your face and getting a real workout together. And another one that we deal with often is sleep disruption. Our screen times have exploded over the years because our phones have become such a part of our lives. I don't know if you're an Apple user, but I certainly get notifications on a Monday telling me how my screen time was in the past week. And every week it's just the same or it's increased. I'm like, I don't remember being on my phone this long, but that is the case. And the issue is when we prolong our exposure to screens, especially before bedtime, it can disrupt our circadian rhythms and it can really reduce our sleep quality. And when you have poor sleep, it can exacerbate mental health issues, and that vicious cycle of stress and insomnia can ensue. And I mentioned again this pressure to be accessible 24/7. The idea of putting my phone on Do Not Disturb between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. really doesn't feel comfortable because I'm like, what if somebody calls me? What if I miss that important conversation, that important phone call? Well, the truth is, how many people call me at that time? But there is that real pressure because everyone just feels that you should be reachable at a drop of a hat. Excuse me. Burnout is another one, and all these things really do contribute to, as we said, techno stress. So let's chat about social media for a second. You know, social media has been good. It has been a good for society because, you know, it has helped with connectivity. And I myself am doing a broadcast here on YouTube, which is a social media platform. So I am grateful for it in many ways. And if you're anything like me, you can probably remember your first phone. You're my age. I remember my first, I call it a brick phone. My goodness, it was a brick. And I remember my first flip Motorola phone. I felt like I was the thing. Things have really advanced in the last 20 years. I remember my first, when I first got Facebook, and it really was helpful. You know, friends that I hadn't seen for 5-10 years, I was able to connect with, and I could keep up with what they were doing in their lives and things. And it was exciting. And do you guys remember Bebo on MySpace? Wow, that wasn't that long ago. And it was fun, and it is still to an extent. But I have to say that my relationship with social media has definitely become much more complicated over time. I can speak for myself as somebody who tends to be more introverted. I like to be in my own space and reflect and think about things deeply before I speak about them. I find that social media wants the opposite of me, and it can make me stress at times. The truth of the matter is social media isn't going anywhere, I don't think. I think it's going to be a part of our lives. And whilst I've said it is positive and has been good for society, I now like to think of it as being neutral. Social media is, I would say, neither good nor bad. It is a tool that can be used for good or evil. It's important, however, that we recognize the avenues through which social media can become a stressor and figure out how we can maintain a balance so that it remains a blessing for us. So, interestingly, social media can have positive influences on your stress levels because, you know, if you're like me who doesn't necessarily live with family and friends that are in the same country, you know, it can help with connectivity, staying staying connected with them and reducing feelings of isolation. And people really enjoy online communities. You can really build relationships there, even though it's over the screen or whatever. And you can find people who have similar interests to you, and it can help to alleviate stress, actually. And there've been some research that's found that social support that's received through social media can influence your mental well-being and reduce stress levels. So that's a good thing. I find as well that social media provides a way for you to express yourself creatively. As a creative, even though I have shied away from social media for a long time, actually, social media has helped to bring out skills in me that I didn't necessarily know existed. So it can be quite good. You can find people of like minds, people of like interest, and you can, develop collaborations with them, and it can provide a constructive outlet for emotions. I think sometimes people take it too far and there's too much going on in that arena, but I think we get the point. And social media can also provide easy access to information about mental health. And Travel Light is an example. I'm using this platform here to shine a light on mental and emotional health, and specifically talking about it through the lens of the Lord. And that's amazing that I can get communication from people in South Africa, for example, which I've had, and that's awesome. I don't think I would have necessarily had that if I didn't have YouTube. So there are good bits to it, but I have spoken about the negative bits about it. We have issues with social comparison and the risk of envy. There's that constant pressure to live your best life so that you can be like the Joneses, and it can really stir up feelings of inadequacy. And I have to say, this is mostly our choice. It's up to us to manage our hearts, because your heart is your garden, and with the Lord, you can decide what you allow as seeds to find its home in your heart. However, when you are bombarded constantly with everyone's fake life and experience it does make it somewhat more difficult. Cyberbullying, as I mentioned, is another one. It can really lead to higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. FOMO, fear of missing out, is another one. And this is one I can really relate to, because social media is so pervasive. It's everywhere and it's moving so fast all the time. There's that need and pressure to keep up with what's going on, because God forbid you miss the latest trend. In a week's time, it's gone, and you wouldn't have done that dance that everybody was doing to boost your social standing, and it can lead to real compulsive check-in. I've been through a time where, as soon as I woke up in the morning, I was looking at my social media account to see what had happened whilst I was sleeping. It's crazy. And FOMO has been shown, certainly in studies have indicated that is linked to negative mood, lower life satisfaction, and increased stress. And I have spoken about information overload. This is a big one. It can really impact on your ability to make decisions and can lead to cognitive fatigue. So how do we mitigate against these issues? Because again, these are the challenges of our age, of the ages, or the age that we are in. Super important that we have balance. So a digital detox is a good idea. Having that time of the day where you're not bombarded with technology, you're not looking at social media, is really good, important, because that can help to prevent or reduce stress and anxiety, improve your sleep quality, improve your ability to be focused and be productive, and can help to boost your self-esteem as well, because you're not comparing yourself to everybody else, everyone who's on the boat in Dubai having their best lives, if they really were. And having healthy boundaries is another one. And if you're like me, if you work at home from time to time, it's so important that you strike or put all your effort into maintaining a healthy work-life balance. So it's important that actually 5 p.m. is 5 p.m. and you finish. And I know this is hard. I know, because I struggle with that myself. If you work at home, again, having a dedicated workspace is a good idea. Prioritizing your self-care is a good one. Making sure that at the weekend you're having your Sabbath, and you take good time out to have real vacations if you can. Engage in activities that will promote your physical and mental well-being. Exercise is a big one. Lift weights, guys. It will do you so much good. Find a hobby. Be good at socializing with your friends and your family, and become good at your management of time. I have changed my thinking with time in that, time is our friend and we can work with it, rather than feeling like we're always under pressure. But being able to use techniques like prioritizing, delegation, and setting realistic goals is a really important one. Guys, seeking support is not, I don't think it is to be laughed at all. I think it's super important. And I think it's something that perhaps our ancestors just had, because people were much more connected in a more meaningful way, maybe. And support just came as part of a territory. But now I think everybody wants to be so individual and just kind of get on with things. And I don't think that works. And I will put my hand up. I am the worst for it. Firstborn child syndrome, guys. We just want to get on with things and do everything we need to do. So super important that we manage that. And when it comes to information overload, again, prioritize what you need information-wise. You don't need every information. We can filter out things we don't need to. Like, I love politics. I love to watch debates. I love to see what's happening in that arena. But my gosh, I can become really obsessed with it. And sometimes I will watch the same story about politics, the same story from different commentators. And I'm like, what am I looking for? It's literally the same thing, but I want to hear everybody else's perspective on it. And that, whilst that might be helpful, I mean, hearing about negative news over and over and over again can be good for my psyche. So very important. Again, taking regular breaks is a massive one as well. We really want to become good at that, being people that are very boundaried, and that when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm not, I'm not. And when I understand the Lord is leading me to maybe not watch this program anymore or to watch this broadcaster anymore, I'm going to obey because he knows what's best for me. So being really boundaried like that is very important. We are coming to the end of this podcast, and I just want to take a few minutes to talk about finances, because now financial stress is not new to humanity. It's something I think that has been there forever. And when we look at Matthew 6, Jesus spends a good amount of time talking about worry, telling us to live simply before the Father. And he talks about that hustle life, our desire to spin and toil. And he's like, no, consider the lilies, how they grow. You weren't meant to spin and toil. So even back then, I believe that they struggle with financial stress because everybody wants to live well. Everybody wants to survive at the very least. I have to say, though, that in our modern life, there are some unique challenges that are part of this age. So I would say, for example, economic instability is a big one. Recessions, inflation, it seems like that's just the word of the day. That's just how it goes. And as a society, we've become much too comfortable with borrowing. And now we're all dealing with high levels of debt. We are all strapped to a mortgage. We have student loans. We have credit cards that we have to pay. Depending on the country that you find yourself, increasing health costs is another one. And because of the way the digital landscape is changing, because of the way the work forces and work demands are changing, I think there's some insecurity around employment prospects. And we can find that there's a lot of underemployment rather. And, certainly for the last year and a half, we've been hearing in the United Kingdom about the cost of living crisis. We have everyday expenses going up. I go to Tesco and I'm like, how did I spend this much money on 5 items? Like, what is happening here? So there is a lot going on. And if you're feeling tight and you're feeling stressed about your finances, whilst that's not the Lord's will for you, know that you're not alone in that. It is something I think everybody is kind of grappling with at the moment. And the last thing I think a lot of people can relate with is a lot of us aren't very clued up on how to manage finances. A lot of us don't know what it means to manage our finances, and we'll probably have a lack of savings and have poor budgeting skills. It's something that I had to come to terms with myself. So all of these things can impact on our stress levels. So it's really important that we pay attention to them. I have been through a time where I buried my head in the sand deeply when it came to my finances. I just had this magical idea that as long as I paid my tithe and I gave, it was going to be fine. But actually, God wants us to be awake to this stuff. He wants us to be shrewd. And the more we bury our heads in the sand, it's cute and we're all going to heaven, yay, but we are kicking the can down the road. And it's important that we wake up to that. So when it comes to financial stress and managing it, first of all, I am not a financial planner and I'm not an expert on these things, but there are people out there that can help you. It's important that we really think about creating a budget and sticking to those tightly. Be good at repaying debt. Don't keep them till you default or it becomes overwhelming for you. Build an emergency savings fund. Guys, again, I'm not an accountant, but these are things I've learned over the years. And as I said, there is no shame in seeking guidance, especially when it comes to your finances. Many of us were not raised with the skills needed to, first of all, even manage our just basic budgets, and not to talk of building wealth or generational wealth. So seek guidance from financial advisors, credit counselors. Just do it right now. And if you are struggling with, financial challenges, practices like mindfulness and even just managing your health, those things are important because, guys, health is wealth. If you have a healthy body, it really does set you up for success. And these things are all intertwined. So manage them well. I can think of one person that can, who I found really inspiring and really helpful. It's a man called Dave Ramsey. He is here on YouTube. You can find his channel. Dave Ramsey is his name. And what I love about him is that he's a believer, and a lot of his principles come from from biblical principles. And I really, really rate his system. So go check him out. He's not paying me, by the way. I just find that he's really, really helpful. So there's help out there. And there is no shame at all. So I have yapped for something like 36 minutes. I want to say thank you so much for sticking with me as we have explored the digital age and the unique issues as in relation to stress that come from this time. Everyone, every generation, every age has had their own stresses, and I think we have ours. And technology, whilst it has been good for us and as a whole, it has come with some unique challenges that we have to pay attention to and become aware of so that we can manage ourselves better and live the lives that God has available for us. So I just want to encourage you to take a few minutes after this podcast and just really reflect on your own experiences with stress and consider the ways that these issues that I've talked about today have impacted on your mental health and your stress levels. And also figure out, of all the strategies that I have shared today, what one of those would work for you? What resonates with you and could better your life? So think about those. And as always, I want to leave you with a word of encouragement from God's love letter to us. This is from Isaiah and from chapter 26. It says, "We have a strong city. God will appoint salvation for walls and bulwarks. Open the gates, that the righteous nation which keeps the truth may enter in." Verse 3 says, "You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for in Yah the Lord is everlasting strength." So guys, life may move at the speed of light or sound or whatever, and there may be chaos everywhere, but his promise is that he will keep us in perfect peace because our minds are stayed on you and because we trust in him. So believe that today. Thank you again so much for listening, for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the episode today. Go ahead again and subscribe and like if you haven't already. And I will see you at the next episode. We're going to continue our chat about stress. I know it's a big one. We're just yapping on about the stress, but guys, it is big and it's important that we pay attention to it. So again, thank you. Until next time, continue to travel light. See you later. Bye.